But can we start again? And Janine, project reboot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's pleasing to have a report in front of you with the project status of Green. Noting though that we have highlighted some turbulence that the project hit over the end of last year, beginning of this year. And that was as we were, I guess, in terms of actual solution readiness and completion through systems integration testing processes last year. In response to that, those concerns were escalated with and for our software provider and have resulted in a pivot in terms of the overall solution design, which has enabled us to really get the program back on track. And not just the program, I guess, for delivery of the solution, but will actually position us much more favourably in the long term around very standard functionality in relation to our accounts receivables processes, as opposed to quite a bespoke tailored solution, which had been what was proposed previously. To ensure that we're able to keep the program on track in light of that change, effectively we have pulled out that bit of functionality and almost running it as a separate project workstream, with Infor having put a separate project manager over it, and we have contracted in additional business analyst and testing resources to support that as well, so that those two things can work in parallel but managed and overseen separately. As we have done through the program to date, we have IQA NZ who provide external assurance services in terms of regular check-ins at key milestones within the program's life. They did undertake their last review at the end of last year, which was really coalescing with all of the challenges that we were having at that point in time. And the report, which staff still working through the comments on response to, really reflects that challenge. In light of the shift in direction that we've made within the program, what I've asked, and it will start, I think, kick off from next week, is effectively another rapid assessment for IQA NZ to come back in and take another look at the program in light of where we are now and the changes that have been made, to see whether they address the issues and concerns that had been raised over that sort of November, December period. And so we will bring that back to the committee. So in terms of the overall program, so Green, which is really pleasing to see. Time, just noting in terms of that change in direction, so we will have effectively 2 go live periods, substantially in July, but with the accounts receivables function following slightly behind in August, but still in line with the agreed timeframes. But just noting that in terms of that pivot for the accounts receivables functionality, that we will be leaning into that additional risk-based contingency that Council had approved last year, but we are well within that overall project funding. So that's probably a whistle-stop tour. Happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you, Janine. Any questions from committee members? No. Chris?
In which case, if I could perhaps just make a comment that, I mean, obviously this is a project that had been very high on my antenna in the last couple of years since I've become Chief Executive, and I do have a lot higher sense of satisfaction. I had the opportunity to meet with some very senior representatives of Infor about 4 weeks ago, Janine, I think it was. Got a level of comfort from them that things are on track at their end. I just reinforced that this is a project that, you know, I do not want to go back to council with, you know, asking for anything more. I think they understand that pretty well. But I just wanted to give you, I'm still keeping an eye over this one myself, and that I think that I've got comfort what the way it's been led as a sponsor through Janine, and the discussions that are taking place within four. I have a level of comfort with that.
Thank you, Chris. Very comforting. So we'll move on to Tracy May and the Coastal Plan Review and Freshwater Policy Review updates.
Thank you and good morning. Share my screen. As noted in the report, I do have some budget information to share. So the main points to highlight in the report, which I think were on page 187, just in regard to the overall project status and project risks. So overall status is looking pretty good of the project. In terms of project risks, they're identified there. They're also in the report of paragraph 6 and 7. Yes, I do just want to appraise the committee of where these processes are at. So with the coastal plan, we are literally months away from notifying that document. With the freshwater plan, we are 18 months, 22 months away from notifying that document. So they're at quite different stages of their gestation. The coastal plan has been going since 2015. So it's been a 7-year process, which is an inordinately long process. I think, and as identified in the report, we did not have a coastal policy team for a number of years. So we were unable to actually do some work. We had one person from a team of 7. So we languished for a couple of years and have definitely made that up in the last 2 years, looking towards notification. So these graphs are really just showing you by month. We are tracking the figures. With this final graph here is in response to our chair, Graham, who identified what does that look like in terms of project, total cost to end of project. Because our project end date is June, we're able to be a bit more specific. What we are anticipating is a potentially $70,000 deficit in the project. Now, I say that these are based on January figures. We've got another 5 months. So I just wanted to give you the confidence that we are tracking this monthly, and there are notes to the graph so that we know exactly why it's changed from 66 to 72 to 69 throughout its life. We are looking at small numbers. Some of the purchase orders came in under 3K. Now, where we're at, again, in the project, very close to notification, we can be a bit more specific, all up in terms of the budget that was set aside and approved by council for the coastal plan, which was 2.8 million. I'm pretty proud that we're saying we're going to be over by 70K. So the coastal plan is, as I've said, it's at the end of its gestation, this phase of the project. Once we notify and put it out for the public, that's when we don't know if we'll get one submission or 1,001 submissions. So that's when we'll recast the budget based on that. I suspect we're going to get more than one. Sorry, I see some councillors looking at me thinking, oh. So that is the coastal plan. In terms of the freshwater plan, these are the same graphs that we are running. In terms of our costs This year we have been hampered, and I noted Chris in his opening comments around what's on his mind. Iwi engagement continues to be a challenge. We've identified that in the paper. Staff capacity remains a challenge, not only staff capacity, as I highlighted for the committee last year, the actual capacity of external consultants to be able to assist us has been a challenge as well. For those members who aren't aware, every regional council is on the same trajectory. By December 2024, we must have this notified. I don't think that was particularly smart of government given how constrained the skills market is in New Zealand. To assist and further complicate matters, the government in their significant reform program has been absorbing any spare capacity there is in the policy and planning market in New Zealand. And in order to absorb that capacity, they're also paying a premium. So that's challenging, but it won't stop us from delivery. In terms of where we are, and this is for this year only, we are again projecting just over $100,000 deficit for year end. Again, there's a lot of work to do between now and June. In terms of actual spent to the end of January, we're looking at 528, which means in accordance with our budget, we've got to spend 700,000 between now and June. Now I'm testing the team hard on going, is that actually a reality? Can we do that? What we do have in March, we're in March, in April, May and June is a fairly intensive engagement period, which tends to increase costs. In terms of total budget costs for the freshwater plan, it might seem like it to some of our new councillors, but it hasn't been going 7 years. It is just a new policy project in the last couple of years. This is taking us from when we substantially ramped up, which was in the 21-22 year for freshwater, through to our year we're in now. The actuals there, obviously we haven't spent it all, but that's what we're projecting to spend by the end of the year. Next year, the budget of 1.4 includes the carryover that we signalled to the Risk and Assurance Committee last year. Sorry, not carryover. Additional funds we were requiring to the tune of 800,000. We secured that through council through the annual plan earlier this year. So these are the revised figures, not the actual figures that would have been in year 3 of the LTP. Which were only around 600,000. And then 24-25, that takes us to the conclusion of the project. Now, based on what we know at the moment, and I have to say my confidence in this figure will be stronger come 30 June. We're looking to be in the positive of 300,000. I would suggest that figure needs to be firmed up and monitored each month, because knowing these projects as I know them, we'll probably may have to go back to council and suggest we may need more money. As I said, we'll know that in June. And if more funding is required, we will do that through the LTP process and put up a comprehensive business case. That's all I have to say, really. Thank you.
Questions? None.
Back on the run.
Thank you, Tracy May.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just maybe a comment from Tracy that, given there's no questions, one of the key consultants you've been using has just been appointed acting chair of the EPA.
Oh,
Is
yes,
that likely to
sorry.
impact the
Yes.
system in any way?
That's a good point. So through you, Mr. Chair, so I've mentioned, stated in the report and reiterated just verbally that iwi engagement is one of our significant challenges. We've just spent the last 2 weeks framing up an approach to iwi engagement. We have 220 iwi entities in our region that we need to talk to and feed into. Our lead iwi engagement contractor, Tiffany Wilson, has just been appointed the interim chair of the EPA as a result of the other chairs moving to the left. We don't know yet what that will mean, whether in the chair role, Tiffany will just be apportioning work or whether he'll actually be engaged in significant hearings. If that occurs, then we will look to a plan B, which used to be our plan A prior to that consultant being taken on board by the Future for Local Government panel. So it's really symptomatic of the fact that the people with the skills and the calibre we want to engage with iwi are being used by central government as well.
Declaring a conflict, I'm on the board of the EPA. The chair role is just a chair role and the hearings are quite different.
Yes.
So whether he's on a panel or not, yeah, and I don't think he's on any major panels right now. We've just done a major panel for the Trans-Tasman and he's not on that. So I don't see panel work getting in the road and the chair role is simply a chair role. So I wouldn't fret, but I can't speak for Stephen, obviously.
No. So thank you for that. Similarly, we didn't know whether to panic fully or just baby panic. So it's worth mentioning. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm seeing him next week. I'll give him a hurry up.
Please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we need a mover and seconder to receive that report. Thank you, Jennifer. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. Item yeah, 10.
Stu.
Okay. Welcome.
Good morning. So Stu Brown, Executive Manager, People and Capability, to take you through the Risk and Insurance report on annual leave management, wellbeing and health and safety indicators. I'll take the report as read and I've noted a few points that I want to highlight and bring to your attention. The first of those being really around the annual leave balances. It's apparent that over the last 12 months, the executive have done a reasonable amount of work and put significant effort into actually reducing the leave balances. And you can see from the report that these have come down, which is great. But obviously there's further work to do there. There's a couple of reasons for that. First and foremost is we want people to have some rest and relaxation, what their annual leave is for, and look after their well-being. And obviously the secondary is the financial cost to the organisation. So moving forward, I want to see across the organisation leave plans put in place for all of those people that are, in excess balances. And I'll expect that my team will support the organisation to do that with the leadership of the executive. Moving on down through, you'll see there at number 5 that we're covering off the staff flu vaccine. So that's coming up. This year we are keen to get a better uptake in that. So we're starting the communications earlier and hopefully going to have a bit more of a drive on the importance and access to that. We had 50% take up last year, so we're keen to improve on that this year. So that was the second point there, really. And the final point that I wanted to draw your attention to is really around the EAP. So that's our Employee Assistance Programme. So you can see from the report that 80% of people who are attending EAP are doing it for personal reasons. And only a small number of people are actually going for work-related things. So it's, I guess, a good indication of our current culture that we have no real issues being highlighted through this reporting, and it's great that a number of staff are using it, although it's still at 52%. So not particularly high, but great that people are aware of it and are accessing it. So that was the points that I wanted to cover in the report.
Questions?
Just a comment really to start with, and that's I recall when the focus started to really go on annual leave some time ago, couple of years ago, really. And it's been really great to see that drop, but what you're proposing there sounds like a little bit what we already have been doing, but good to see the focus continuing there.
Yeah.
A quick question I had around the employee assistance program. I recall somewhere hearing that could you clarify for me, is it just for the employee or is it the employee and their family? It's just a small clarification. Do you know?
Yeah, it's for our employees, but obviously, when you're looking at 80% of issues being, with,
Yeah, that's
personal
right.
stuff, obviously it's the employee's completely entitled to go along and discuss things that are going on within the family and look for solutions there for them.
But it's
and
not their family members as well.
No,
is
no,
it?
not,
Okay,
not them to
that's
go
what I wanted to
directly.
clarify.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
But we would certainly expect that they can go on behalf and, it's part of their well-being as well as their family. So,
Sure.
yeah.
No, thanks for that.
No more? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a mover and seconder to receive that report, please. Thank you. Chris, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move now on to the gifts register.
Me?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is our 6-monthly report in terms of gifts that have been declared as received by either elected members or staff. Sits within our sensitive expenditure policy suite and is used to support consideration of any potential conflicts of interest. Every year staff are asked to, so we have a process to be able to record gifts as they're received over the course of the year, but staff undertake an annual declaration in terms of any potential conflicts of interest that they may have with suppliers they've been engaging with, as well as confirmation that all of their gifts have been declared. Information of the committee.
Jennifer.
Yeah, my question was in paragraph 5, it talks about a value of $500, and then in the attachment, it talks about $100. I just wanted to clarify which one it is, or am I reading that wrong?
I think section 5 is in relation to the change in legislation.
Oh, right.
In terms of
Our policy is still 100.
Yeah, so there is the second recommendation there is around requesting staff to review the gift policy to align with the recent change in legislation, which again is sort of belts and braces around the potential conflict of interest for members.
That makes sense, thank you. And then the only other one I had was, I noted on the elected members register attached that there was a rugby ticket put down for 250, and then later in the staff one I saw what I assumed to be a similar kind of game to be $100 on the staff one. Just saw the discrepancy. It's probably the same game. Maybe they are different.
Maybe one of the gift recipients at the end of the table.
Did Barry get extra perks to you?
He sat in a high profile, yeah. We're in the rain and he's in the dry. No, we're all hosted in the same space, so I guess that we guesstimate what the value of that would
Yeah,
be.
sure.
I'd probably put it down as close to what the ticket for the game would have been. He might have felt that he was wined and dined and that should be a higher value. But,
No, that's fine. I just thought I'd check because
I'm
not worried about it.
No, but I guess that the thing comes out of it. The elected members put something, staff, we should try and make sure there's some cross-referencing that agreement, similar value.
all good. Thanks so much.
Pamela.
And I suppose it would be helpful to take, particularly because we have a number of new counselors, it would be helpful to give some examples to counselors so that they're really clear. Like as a for instance, we've got the Balance Farm Environment Awards coming up tonight. and a number of councillors have been invited to that. And it's that question of, are we there representing WRC as one of the agencies that are funding or supporting an award? Or are we there, is it considered hospitality? I think that there's some gray areas and some ambiguity that we could help councillors be really clear on.
And I'd second that as well, just through the chair, because Angela and I just attended Te Matatini on behalf of Waikato Tainui's invitation, and so even it didn't occur to me until just before. Thank you.
Yeah, I think certainly from a staff perspective, and it might be worthwhile considering it from an elected member perspective as well, is my response would be, if in doubt, declare. You know, we can put context around the event. I know, and I've got some examples in there in terms of being invited to a dinner. Now it's a working dinner, but because of the relationship with that supplier, I think it's important that there's transparency in any of those more informal interactions that I do have. So I just full disclosure, and it takes any shadow of doubt off the table.
And I could, Mr. Chair, I suppose that also some of that clarity is around, I know that there's $100 limit, maybe escalated to $500 limit, but I also know that there have been instances in the past where we've declared things that are well below that. You know, obviously as elected members, people will want to meet with us. They'll buy us a coffee. You know, is there warrant in declaring that level, even though it's below the dollar threshold? If our position is, if in doubt, declare it, are we declaring every coffee? Do you know what I mean? I think we just need to send a very clear and consistent message to all of our councillors.
I think coffees, no, $5, $6, but there is. Well, no, well, the threshold is 50, and I think that you have to use discretion. You know, in all these things.
I think there's also been past discussion in terms of the cumulative view on that over time. So one might be okay. If it becomes a really regular occurrence, then is there something else that could be interpreted from that? Not would be, but could be.
Because this is all about appearances. Chris?
Look, my contribution just be that it is discretionary. It is a judgment call. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong if it's put in. I do think it's a good example you gave. I'd say something from my personal opinion, something like the Balance Farm and Environment Awards, where we are a sponsor of, we've had a long history with. That's why we get an invitation to it, which is probably quite different to something like being invited to the rugby Te Matatini. I think probably it would be advisable. My advice would be, yeah, that sort of thing you probably should, because it wouldn't be the normal course of our work. But what we might do, as you say, is there'll be shades of grey and everything, and maybe Janine, if we could just find, even if we just sent out a note, a guidance note or something to councillors, it might be helpful.
I note we've got no declined gifts this time, but believe it or not, we have to record those too. So there's a very high threshold for compliance. And, you know, we have seen some be declined, and it's always an option. But I think going into an election year, this stuff will be scrutinised, and you've got to be purer than the driven snow. Right. If we don't have any more questions, the resolution is to receive, well, both the elected members register and the staff register. Do I have a mover and seconder? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jennifer. Those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item 12, policy new schedule update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just one policy being reported back to the committee this time, which is around the health, safety and wellbeing policy. As noted, this was reviewed by the Chief Executive and Council Chair and signed off in November when obviously we were in that early post-election period. So that policy is provided there for the committee's information. The report also sets out the schedule of the policies that are subject to review and will come back to this committee as those reviews are undertaken. As a subset of all of the policies that council operates under.
Thank you, Janine. Questions? None?
Yeah, oh no, I've got a quick one. Just any comment, Janine, the asset management one was due last April, so it's almost a whole year. Are these annual, like say the asset management one, or is it
3 yearly?
3 yearly, right? So we're comfortable that we're 1 year over, but we want to wait another year because of the KPMG report.
Yeah.
Just
and
any commentary
no,
that you're comfortable with that, or why?
Well, yeah, and I guess it's one that is owned by ICM, but actually provides an interface between ICM and finance around the considerations and treatment of asset management expenditure. That is not something that's subject to regular change, hence the triennial review period. I think it is appropriate to wait for the KPMG review in terms of progress that has been made in the asset management space. It's obviously been, I think 2017 was the last time that we actually had an internal audit review in that space. So I think if we follow that policy up with that review, that would make good sense.
Okay, thanks for that. Just
No more questions. Do I have a mover and seconder to receive the report? Yes. Pamela. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the open agenda. We need to now move to go into PX. Thank you. Seconder. Jennifer. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried.